in. You are listening live to the Angel Rock on United Public Radio Network, also known as UFO Paranormal Radio Network, being broadcast to you out of New Orleans, Louisiana. I'm your host, Lorilei Potvin. A little bit about myself. I'm a Canadian clairvoyant medium, a crystal Reiki energy healer, an Akashic Records practitioner, spiritual teacher, and mentor, as well as a registered nurse. And I'm going to throw in truth seeker because of what we're starting tonight, something epic, something exciting. I'm going to give you a heads up right away. If you're on my Facebook profile, you guys leave me the most fantastic comments, but they don't show up for the show. So if you want to comment, you want to ask questions, where we will be able to see your comments is over either on the UFO Paranormal Radio Facebook page. You can also go to our YouTube channel of the same name, UFO Paranormal Radio. We also have, sorry guys, I got the windows open. I can hear that with my headphones. Also, our second channel is UFO Gods and Extraterrestrials. We have a third, but we're not broadcasting to that this evening. If you've never been to the show, welcome. As well as if you're returning, we always really appreciate your support. We love that you're part of the Angel Rock and UPRN family. And what I say about my show is I cover all aspects of the esoteric, the supernatural, the unexplained, but always with a positive twist by the end of the show. And the guests that I have on are making a positive change for humanity, I feel, anyways. My mouth doesn't want to work tonight. Whatever they're doing, whether it's extracurricularly or professionally, and tonight is no different. We have a returning guest, but before I introduce him, I do want to say to you guys, because we had a bit of a discussion off air over the weekend, and that is neither one of us are experts on this topic. And it got me thinking about the word expert. Who really is an expert if you think about it? Because to me, expert or expertise comes with research, with knowledge, with growing that knowledge base with time and being immersed, whether it's in the subject or the topic, it could be the job. But I'll tell you, with all the hats I wear myself, and I'm sure our guest and I will have quite a little bit of a discussion about this, I don't consider myself an expert in any of them. Am I knowledgeable? Yes, I believe I am, but do I know everything? No. And I consider myself to be a lifelong learner. So without further ado, this is our returning guest. It is Tom Reilly. He is an author. He is a historian. He's coming to us from the beautiful country of Ireland, and it's quite late there. So I'm so glad you're here. Welcome, Tom.
Thank you, Lorilei, and I'm very disappointed that you said you don't know everything because I thought you did.
No, I don't. Actually, I ran into somebody today. I'm in quite a few chat groups from around the world, and I'm in
Yeah.
one with independent podcasters and guests of a previous podcast and what have you. And I always post the link to the show in there. And they said, well, I'm going to be watching from Ireland. It's quite late. I said, well, our guest is from Ireland. So he
Oh my
says he's going to
God,
be watching.
I love
So
it. I've worn my Irish jersey on just especially
I
for
love
yeah,
it. I love it. So I
yeah.
guess I should mention I've kind of kept people in suspense here because I didn't say what we were going to talk about. But Tom and I and my partner, the Dell, as he's known on the network, has his own show, The Delicious Recipe, not a cooking show, on Thursday evenings live. He's also had Tom on his show, and Dell and I, whether he's met people through me because I've been doing this longer than he has, or we have a wonderful PR agent that you've been working with. That's how we met you, with Gavin Lee Davies. He's a
That's
friend of the
correct.
show.
Yes.
And we just click with certain people. And it's not that we're being snotty or anything. You just know when you click with people, and you're one of those people. So we were
We're
talking.
just the best. That's
You
basically
are,
what
you're
you're
the
saying.
best.
Yeah, yeah,
So
absolutely.
we were talking, and the funny thing is, when you were on my show, after the show, I forgot what we were talking about, and you said, have you heard of the DaVinci Code? And my spidey senses, as I call it, just went bing, 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 bing. Oh wow, yes, yes, yes. And
Yeah.
then I was telling Tom this, and like we were chatting with messages back and forth, and I said, you will not believe what happened after you and I talked about that. No word of a lie, at least 5 different conversations over the next 24 to 48 hours happened around the DaVinci Code with people that I was not expecting for it to come up. It just came
Incredible.
up.
Absolutely.
So that's where we're going with this. And we said, let's do a series on this. There is so much information.
This is the Twilight Zone.
But is it really?
Yeah.
Because you know what, Tom, like the movies, I understand based on the book. Of course, we agreed that, but I think it's with everything. The movies are never as good as a book, right? The movie came out. And when you look at what it was based on, there was a little bit of, well, probably even a little bit more of tidbits of truth. What's your thoughts about that versus the real story?
So yeah, the DaVinci Code, and the DaVinci Code is a novel, obviously, and it's fiction basically. But the author Dan Brown has said on different fora that there were lots of different facts behind the. This is the thing. Like he's based it a lot on. He's based the narrative and the story and the plot on very factual situations. We won't just get into specifics right now, but I think there are two books, Lorilei, that this now there are lots of books involved in this whole topic. But there are two primary books that are worth mentioning. So the DaVinci Code is the big one that everybody knows currently in the modern day, but there was also the Holy Blood and the Holy Grail, which the DaVinci Code was based on. And came out in 1982, and believe it or not, there was a lawsuit that the authors of the Holy Blood and the Holy Grail, at least two of them, there were three authors, they took against the DaVinci Code because they wanted to make a few bob, and they reckoned that their notions and their idea were plagiarized. As it happens, Dan Brown won the case, and they didn't.
Good.
It was.
Of course, he never mentioned that in the video link. I was like drawn in the second you shared that with me, and it was one of the authors from the book, and he not once mentioned about this little lawsuit about.
No, that's right. Yeah,
the Dan Brown book.
Interestingly, he's the one who didn't take the case. The other two did. There were three of them.
Okay.
He didn't do that. But we might just get to his name and reveal it. But also interestingly, there's a whole thread that runs through, if people can remember the DaVinci Code and what it stood for. It basically stood for a secret that was really generally not in the mainstream and has not been for centuries, but the secret kind of centered around the fact that maybe Jesus didn't die on the cross, and maybe he lived, and maybe his bloodline existed, and maybe it survived all the way through to today. And
what the Holy Grail really is, not a chalice, but
well, interestingly, there's a play on words there, because the Holy Grail, I think this is in the DaVinci Code. It's sang real, so that can be, so it's SANG or ALL.
Royal blood.
That's royal blood, correct. But if you put the two of them together again and you just have San Graal, that's Holy Grail. So the two are synonymous with each other, and it's one of those situations like, is this secret that the Priory of Sion, this group are keeping and protecting, that it goes all the way back to the Merovingian kings and all that kind of stuff. But I'd like, if you don't mind, to kind of start at the very beginning of this.
Yes, always good to start at the beginning. The one thing I did want to add very quickly to that, and then yes, that's what I was going to say. Let's start at the beginning. How you became so interested, and you've done over the years. You said you had to brush up. You'd kind of gotten away from it because with your Oliver Cromwell, and I should have mentioned that. That's why he was on my show, was to talk about his incredible book about Oliver Cromwell. But where was I going with this? Okay, so the whole story, it'll come back to me, but it had something to do with the Grail and the whole bit with it. And just the fact about when you start looking at all the pieces of the puzzle as they start fitting together, which we will, and like I said, we're hoping to do a series with this. It won't be week after week, but we're going to try and work around each other's schedules, and some might be with Del. That's the other thing I wanted to add. I did talk to Del briefly at work today. He works till 6:30 our time. My show starts at 6 o'clock Eastern Standard Time. So I told him if he gets home at a decent hour, he's more than welcome to hop on. So he may join us.
Super. That's great. Love when Del gets involved.
Well, I hope he gets on. We'll see. Now I'll say that he won't be able to get on.
Let's hope he brings you pizza this time as well.
Oh, he's tired, working hard. Okay, let's start at the beginning. Let's talk about this.
Yeah, it's one of those fascinating stories. I'm a bit of a Francophile, and I like France, and we're reasonably close to it here, so we go to France on a regular basis. And I was going for years.
So envious.
Yeah. And we actually had property in France, believe it or not. We went over on a very regular basis. But I didn't know anything about this. It wasn't on my radar. And this is well before the DaVinci Code came out. This is some years back. And anyway, my wife and I were walking through a village, and I just saw a sign for a place called Rennes-le-Château.
Yes.
And something just twigged in my memory, and I thought
it just lit up for you. It was like ding, ding, ding.
There was something, and I looked at her and I said, "There's something about that place that I've either heard or I know, or there was a feeling. I just knew it was something." And this is exactly, how it played out for me. And I just decided, okay, let's Google it. Even in those days, it wasn't that easy. Google was still a noun; it wasn't a verb, if you know what I mean. And,
yes.
And, I had to get back to the hotel and probably, dial up, the old.
Modem. Yes. Oh gosh.
Remember those jokes. Anyway, long story short, I realized that this whole place, and I can't tell you really, Lorilei, how I can't get across to you how amazing this place is, not just in the landscape and how beautiful it is and how amazingly historic, and it's just it like you talk about Ireland, but for France, they seem to keep a lot of the villages and towns because it's so vast. France is a very big country. They didn't knock down all these places. This is quite a remote place, so it's more or less exactly as it would have been, almost 1,000 years ago when it started to be built.
Okay.
So I looked at, there's so many angles on this, the history, so many different civilizations have passed through this area. Like the Cathars were a sect who didn't believe certain things that the Catholics did. And that's a huge dimension, and that's a whole other rabbit hole you can go down.
No, but I'm going to stop you just really quickly there. Yeah. Paul Anthony Wallace has been on my show quite a few times, as well as Dell's. We met him through Gavin as well. But he was talking about the Cathars. He said Cathars, but you're right, it's a whole rabbit hole you could go down, but there's a lot of interesting information contained with history and what have you. That's what I was going to say. The one thing I wanted to do about the DaVinci Code, which I'm not surprised by, but when I was looking and doing some research, some of the stuff that we see with Freemasonry, eventually we'll get there, but I wanted to throw that little tidbit out there for people.
That's right, yeah, that's thrown in there as well.
You said the Cathars, sorry, I interrupted.
Yeah, that's okay. I think maybe it's a continental thing, but we call them the Cathars here. But like there's so many different pronunciations between ourselves and yourselves. But the whole idea with it's worth just a couple of sentences on them, because there was a crusade by the Pope who decided that these non-Christians need to be whipped into shape because they weren't paying taxes like they should have been with the church. But not just that, but they were what they would have called them heretics, because they didn't believe what the Catholic Church was preaching. But they had a very simple life, and it was very honorable, and they called their priests good men or perfects, because they were essentially perfect. And anyway, they started off a crusade in the early 13th century, and it was called the Albigensian Crusade in the initial stages around 1206. And they sent down knights and soldiers, and basically they burnt at the stake anybody who wouldn't conform to the Catholic faith. And there's so much of that around, and so much. Now, again, they wouldn't have been a rich organization, but they would have received donations from a lot of their adherents. So, and I'm just throwing that in because there is a suggestion when we get to talk about money and such like, that they also had a cache of treasure, and they became extinct at one point, but the treasure, nobody really knows where that's gone. So that's a little teaser
or
there.
Do we?
Or do we? Exactly. Yeah. Correct. So the Cathars were a big dominant aspect of the early history of this place, and they lived all around this land, but they were basically obliterated by the Christians, and it was terrible. But the other big aspect of that particular area is, and this is, I think, well known, is that Mary Magdalene.
That's where I was going to. That was the point. I don't mean to cut you off, but you know what shocked me that I did not know was that they actually had a church in that video you sent me with Mary Magdalene's name. I'm thinking, how odd is that? Till I got further into the video and heard a little bit, because I mean, she's been so demonized by the church, and she was a working girl, if you want to call it the term nowadays, and just basically demonized her to the nth degree. Anyways, go ahead. Sorry.
No, it's fine. Can you please jump in anytime you like, Lorilei? Seriously, it's absolutely great, because I always get embarrassed when I talk too much, because that's the tendency I have.
Don't be embarrassed.
Thank you. So but the Mary Magdalene thing is kind of fascinating, because as far as I know, and again, I'm not an expert in this field, but she did flee to the south of France, and there were lots of different references to where she was and how she ended up there and lived her life there. But of course, the whole the suggestion, and there are in the Gnostic Gospels, there are hints that perhaps Jesus survived the crucifixion. Well, we all know he rose again in 3 days, or he's alleged to have risen again in 3 days. But there is a suggestion, and there is a school of thought that believes that he, along with Mary Magdalene, who he was allegedly married to, in this school of thought, and their children, that would be Sarah and James.
Yes, I know about Sarah. Oh, I know. I did a show a while back on Sarah. Right at the beginning. I've been here for over 3 years. Right. I had somebody contact me. Now, again, I respect that you know your views with the paranormal and what have you, but they claim that they were connecting with Sarah on that side. Wow. And there's not very much said about Sarah being the daughter of Jesus and Mary Magdalene. So it was very interesting. Sorry, James, I didn't know the name of. I've heard anywhere from 7 to 2 children. I'd always heard 2. So
2. Well, again, this is stuff that's easily available, and if you really want to research it, but look, most people will tell you that the Bible, more or less, there's a very misogynistic angle to calling, as you called her, Mary Magdalene, a working girl. And I think they demonized her for different reasons. But, there are good foundations to believe that they may have been married. I don't know. Who knows?
I had a show on this, actually, on my old network with my friend Augie Nost. And our producer kept bugging us to do this. Wow. And Augie's been all over the world because he was a pilot. Hi, Kelly. I'm not ignoring you. So much to talk about, but I wanted to say hi. Kelly is Rainbow Light Paranormal in the chat.
Hi, Kelly.
So, and I grilled Augie. Like, he's a good friend of mine, but he told me the 2 names of Jesus. And I said, how did you know this? Where did you get this? He talked beyond a shadow of a doubt that he believed that Jesus was married. He gave his reasons as to why he believed it. And he's been over there. He's seen a lot of the scrolls, and he saw the wanted poster for Jesus when they were like all kinds of stuff. So again, is it beyond a shadow of a doubt? No. But I also know Augie to be very, very truthful. He's a podcaster on Broadcast Team Alpha, and he's been on the show many, many times. Super knowledgeable guy. But I wanted to throw that in there. Sorry.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Throw anything you like in. And I think that's another, it's a reasonably, if you think about what the Bible is the message it's trying to give us, there are lots of anomalies in there. Essentially.
Tons, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know, I'm not an expert on the Bible, but I know there's so many contradictions as well. So it's not beyond the bounds of possibility that
Yes.
you know they wanted us to think that Jesus died and rose again on the third day and then ascended into heaven. There is another, and we might come to this at some point as well. This ascension into heaven has also been suggested that aliens have controlled the ascension, if you like.
Yeah.
And that, I'm just going to go down this tiny tangent. That all manifests also in the south of France when there's a village very close to Rennes-le-Château, and it's called Bougerac. It's also a mountain, and the mountain is a reasonably desirable place for the esoteric individuals and hippies and so on who go there. And on the 21st of December 2012, that was when the world was supposed to end, and the aliens were going to reintroduce Jesus into the world, and the apocalypse was.
I did not hear that.
Yeah, all of this is kind of there. You know, there were lots of different stories attached to this. There were so many layers of intriguing stories with this whole area. But that's one of them. And apparently the mountain, Bougerac, people have heard so many UFO sightings down there, but they've also heard, whirring and vroom, that there are UFOs in the mountain. And the mountain was supposed to be, anyway, it didn't happen on the 21st of December 2012, which is no surprise.
Because we're still here.
We're still here. But you know, they got the National Guard in France. Actually,
really?
On the 21st, because they had to stop people practicing occult, rituals.
Okay.
There was and people bought property down there in that village because this was the village where everything was going to happen. People believed that this was going to be the one village that survived in the whole world. So, a lot of people flocked there, and property prices went through the roof. And whereas it wasn't.
I think I heard something about that, but I'll be honest with you, Della and I have been, you want to call it awake, whatever you want. We've been aware of things that aren't mainstream media. Let's put it that way. We did prepare for December 21st, 2012, not because we thought the world was necessarily going to end. No, we didn't. We didn't even hear about some of the stuff you're sharing. We just felt that if there was maybe going to be an opportune time to say, cut the internet or the power or something, it's the middle of winter. We've talked about the winters this weekend where you live and where I live, being in Canada. And so we prepared because we knew there was no reason not to. It wasn't going to go bad. And even with weather, anything can happen. Actually, Del and I do shows on this because you should be prepared. No guarantees what, power's always going to be there, internet's always going to be there or anything.
What possible harm can it do?
Exactly.
Absolutely. Be prepared. That's the Scouts motto. Are you familiar with the Scouts?
I am. Good thing Del's not here because he'd get on a whole tangent about that one. He was the Boy Scout. Yes, he was.
That's good.
Yes.
So you've got all this history going on in the area. Like I say, you've got the different, iterations of populations that inhabited it. So we'll kind of fast forward to let's say the 19th century. So Rennes-le-Château is the village, and essentially there is a priest who is designated as the parish priest, and he gets this. He's a local priest. He was born in a village across the way called Montezels. So this is the kind of history lesson. So when the story behind the whole thing. So when he gets the village, it's a very downtrodden. It's a poor village. There's very little going on. It's at the top of a very reasonably high mountain. In fact, the views are just spectacular. It's like the top of the world. It's unbelievable.
Wow.
It's amazing. But of course, he maybe wouldn't appreciate that as much. He needed to look after his flock. Now, the big thing about this is soon. This is about 1895 when he arrives there. And very soon, he's in debt. I believe the average wage of a priest in those days, the annual salary was about 900 francs, and he was in debt. But within a couple of years, he starts to spend
Mm-hmm.
significant thousands, and I mean thousands. He
Mm-hmm.
renovates the church. He builds a big villa. He renovates the gardens. He builds a water tower for the village. He builds this huge, big belvedere, kind of a viewing point that looks over all these
Mm-hmm.
mountains. He actually, believe it or not, renovates the roadway up to the village. Now, if I won the lotto, and if you won the lotto, I suspect the first thing you think of wouldn't be to go out and improve
But
the,
I
improve the
wondered
road.
what the purpose was, because in the research I was doing and some of the videos you had sent, it sounds like
Hmm.
also he was hanging out with a lot of high placed, high
Rollers.
name, wealthy individuals that a priest like him would never probably cross paths with normally, right?
Absolutely,
Hmm.
absolutely. That's absolutely the case. So yeah, he suddenly finds himself in these circles, and
Hmm.
he's there are rumors of affairs as well with different ladies who are famous singers and so on.
Hmm.
So yeah, it's massive, and it's a total contradiction to what's happening in any other village in the area, and he is. Now, he obviously comes to the attention of the church very quickly, because this shouldn't be happening. So they suspect that what he's doing is that he's trafficking masses. So that would
Oh.
essentially, yeah, would mean that he would be sending the word out there that I can say a mass for you or your relative, or your maybe one of your relations is in purgatory or something, and I can get him out by saying a mass, or him or her. But that's a kind of a weak.
That's what I was thinking. There's no way even that would generate the kind of wealth he had.
Absolutely. I mean, if you look at what he actually spent, I think in today's money, it's probably about $5 million.
Like if he
And
could turn water into wine, I could see people paying him like that, but
yeah,
not
yeah.
for trafficking masses.
Well, yeah, exactly. And the
Mhm.
going rate for trafficking, like if you work it out, and the people have done, I didn't have to do it. Like he would have needed 3 times the population of Europe to pay him the going rate.
Wow.
So that didn't happen.
Hmm.
Well, essentially, I don't believe that it happened, because it's far too ridiculous.
Ludicrous.
Now, what people are suggesting is, and again, we might get to this, is that he discovered some sort of treasure.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I
Now
believe he did.
yeah. Well, the story kind of dovetails nicely into that, and I'm just going to give you an indication of how that's possible. So there are 5 potential answers or solutions as to where this money came from.
Okay.
One one would be the Knights Templar.
Hmm.
So again, there's a very rich history of the Knights Templar in the area, and they were basically an organization who were originally formed to protect pilgrims who went to the Holy Land. But of course, lots of people gave them money over the years, and they became very wealthy, and they
Yes.
lasted up to, I think, 12, 13, when they were actually, that's where is it Good Friday? Not Good Friday. What's the word? Anyway, I can't remember. There's a day in our calendar that is associated with them. It's their demise, and it was on a Friday, and
Mm.
that's when they were all taken out, so to speak. So the Templar treasure essentially has never been found. I'm saying that, not being an expert, it may be disseminated all over the world. I don't know. Another possibility is the Visigoths. The Visigoths, all these words are going to assail people's ears. They allegedly invaded Jerusalem and stole the Temple of Solomon, or from the Temple of Solomon. So
Ooh.
the Ark of the Covenant was included in these riches, the Holy Grail, perhaps, potentially, but lots of money and lots of
Yeah,
jewelry.
but okay, so just sitting with that for a
Yeah,
minute now.
sure.
So the Holy Grail, they say, has never been found, oh, nor the Ark of the Covenant. But they're saying that you can't even lay human hands on the Ark of the Covenant, right? Or the what the I don't want to say prophecy, but the let's put the information out there is it can only be handled by some a being of like ethereal light or something that's not human, basically, right?
Yeah,
Because it'd be
yeah.
frizzled in a second. I think if you even look at it, isn't that what? Suppose something to that effect, if I'm not
That's
mistaken.
or Indiana Jones. I don't know. I mean, is this?
Well, there's a lot of truth in movies, right?
I know.
Predictive
Yeah,
programming,
absolutely.
there is.
Absolutely. Yeah, yeah. By the way, Friday the 13th is what I was trying to think of there. That's how they were
Oh,
all.
oh, I did not know that. So
Yeah, that's
that's
where that
now that you
expression
say
comes
that,
from.
yeah, that makes sense.
Makes sense. Yeah. No, the Ark of the Covenant, absolutely. But the intriguing thing about all of this is that there's so many angles. About maybe 10 kilometers away from Rennes-le-Château is a little village called Arca, and that's Arques. So Arc, and it's pronounced Arc in French, in France.
Oh.
So, there's just more intrigue in that area. So that's two possibilities. You've got the possibility of the Knights Templar treasure. You've got the possibility of the Visigoths Temple of Solomon treasure.
Okay.
You've got the potential I mentioned earlier on about the Cathars. Now, the Cathars, I can't. Again, I just wish I was more articulate and more descriptive. When I went to France, we went on a regular basis, and one of the things we discovered in this area was there's a mountain called Mont Segur. And Mont Segur, it's not, the way you when you sometimes go up mountains, they're quite distant and they splay, and you think you're at the top, and then there's another, maybe
peak,
a couple of miles. Yeah, there's always a peak. This is one. It's like a tower, but it's just it's very sheer. You go up at
like
the top.
an obelisk, almost kind of like.
Very like an obelisk. Yeah.
Wow,
absolutely.
that oh boy, my brain's just going now. Obelisk, energy center point. We've got gazillions of them all around the world.
Well, there are suggestions as well that this was the inspiration for Spielberg's Close Encounters, if you remember.
Oh, yeah, I remember. Yeah.
Yeah, there were suggestions, but Mont Segur is, and I got climbed it on numerous occasions, and it's very.
Oh.
Yeah, and when you look up, you can see the people. They're like ants up at the very top.
Wow.
It's just unbelievable. Anyway,
I gotta get me over to Europe one of these days.
I'm telling you, if I'm not giving you the appetite to get over here quickly, I don't know what's going on.
I would love to go.
Yeah, you really should. So Mont Segur is where the Cathars made their last stand. And again, there are books on this, and there's a terrible story where the village, they were down to their last remnants, and the Christians were all around the bottom, and there was no way they were going to survive this. So they decided they'd have to get the treasure that they had accumulated out. And apparently there are stories and documented stories, believe it or not, even from the 14th century, that two guys managed to scale down the walls or down the mountain in a way that the Christians couldn't see, and they managed to escape with the Cathar treasure. Now, where that went, who knows? But it's quite close to Rennes-le-Château. So that's another possibility. So that's the third possibility as to real money, physical money. And then you've got how he got, you've got the masses. Maybe the masses was something, the way he got the money, but I don't believe that.
I don't believe that one either.
No. But
well, then being a small village, even though there's villages around it, there are people that will be benefactors and give money, but not everybody, especially if you're poor, you're not going to have the buckets of money to pour in for a treasure.
Well, no, again, one of the ideas that somebody put forward was that he used the power of the newspaper when he placed ads in newspapers all over the world, and lots of different people would have sent him money. But that's too easy, I mean, one priest. I mean, that would have been.
Plus, it would have come out somewhere that that's what happened, because this is a big mystery and secret still to this day, right? Yeah,
absolutely.
So you wouldn't really have to keep that secret, especially after on his deathbed, right? Because everything went to his housekeeper. Somebody would have told the story even after he left. That's how he got the money.
And you would think if this was working, that there are priests all over Europe and all over the world who would do exactly the same thing. So it can't have been on that scale. The other idea is that the Habsburgs, and this was the Austrian royalty, Saunier was a well-known royalist, beg your pardon, monarchist. So same thing. So France would have been ruled by a republic. It would have been ruled by monarchs over the years. But in Saunier's time, it was obviously back to being a republic. And this is a kind of a key area, but Sonier there was a political movement at the time who were going to bring back the monarchy to France if they had won. I don't know how they were going to do that exactly, but Sonier was a big advocate of this political movement. He preached against the Republic, but he preached very much for a monarchy, because that's what a lot of countries in Europe were, and the Habsburgs existed in Europe at that time. So the suggestion is that the Habsburgs paid Sonier, although he was a backwoods priest on a very remote village, but they had to start somewhere, and they decided, because it was quite close to Spain, that they and there's also a suggestion that they wanted to learn about France, and they wanted to go to this place on a regular basis and maybe learn about the whole area. And that's where the money came from too. So that's 5 different possibilities, all of which have different.
Well, we know he didn't win the lottery like nowadays.
No, we know, absolutely. The final one then, and the big one.
I'm going to close the window while you're talking. Go ahead, because I can keep hearing it. Go ahead.
Yeah,
sorry.
No problem. Mm-hmm. No, the final one is that Sonier discovered that the bloodline of Jesus was extant, and that he bribed the church, but with threats that he would go public if they didn't pay him. Now,
okay, can I stop you right there for a second? Let's have a little bit of a discussion. To me, I've never understood why, if this was the truth, why it needed to be the truth, except that I understand with, I've always said the Bible, when I first started, I've known Del my whole life, but when we started going out, I kept saying to him that the Bible is many people believe in it because, go back to physics, energy can neither be created nor destroyed, but it can transfer from one place to another. So collectively, it's got good energy or thoughts around it, right? Mm-hmm. But it's a man-made document. They're still finding versions of documents that could have been in the Bible. In the beginning, Del used to think I hated the Bible. I said, I don't hate the Bible, but what I'm saying is I think it's a literal guideline, and it's a man-made interpretation from wherever their information came from. So that's where my whole point is with all of this is why hide that Jesus was married? Why hide, the bloodline? Because except that my whole point about the Bible is that it was there, right? Did they have to stand behind it to prop it up on its laurels? I don't understand why this is so important. We have to hide this.
I think the answer is a very glib one, really, and that's the one would be my opinion, that they want you to believe what they want you to believe.
Yeah.
Okay. I mean, whoever they are.
That's where I was what I was trying to say, that it was written there how things were, and this is how they were. There was no questions or answers about it, right? And if it came out Jesus was married, had children, I guess everything would crumble, would all fall apart.
Everything would crumble, exactly. That's a huge deal, and of course, you need evidence, so you need some form of evidence. Going back 2,000 years, it's unlikely that something could still be unearthed even at this stage. You never know. But it's a huge question for mankind whether or not. I mean, this guy, did he just get lucky, and was he just one of those very charismatic individuals who managed to convince the world of his doctrine? Or is there something else at play? Is it something that's divine? Is it coming from God? Like men eventually, in the first instance, and God is directing them. Does God exist? Anyway, you're right. There's a whole series in that too. But at this point in time, we have to believe that there's a suggestion that one of the possibilities, and this is what the Da Vinci Code is all about, is that the Merovingian kings who, I think the last one died in 679, Dagobert II, and he features actually in our story quite soon, and all the way down to the present day. And there was a guy who features in Da Vinci Code called Pierre Plantard, who in the 50s, revealed that he was of Jesus's blood, and he was French. Now, he's been since cast as a fantasist and a con man. But, was he or was he not? I don't know. I've got no idea. But he certainly, he was exposed in a few areas. Now, he's dead now. He died. So, but I do believe, just as a matter of interest, when we come to the Priory in a few minutes, I do believe that there is currently a Priory of Sion, because it's far too big for there not to be. You know what I mean?
I agree too.
Yeah, after the movie.
Or have they merged, when we get to that part of the story, with another organization that is global and we know about, right?
You might want to spell that one out for me.
Masons, the Masons,
oh,
the
the
Freemasons,
Masons,
because there's a lot of stuff that came up in the research I saw. Have they merged? Are they one and the same?
Yeah,
I don't know.
Good point. Absolutely, yeah, it's a good point. So that's more or less Sonia. We'll come to the church scenario, because there's an awful lot of things going on.
Wasn't there a document too that he had though too, Sonia?
We're going to come
I
to
read
that.
your
absolutely.
mind. Okay, there you go.
Yeah.
Sorry, I'm getting ahead of myself.
No, it's fine. Again, I'm not sure exactly what thread to take here on this.
We're just going with whatever way it goes. And in the beginning, it's a lot of information, guys. But when we pick little bits and pieces and then we really take it apart, you're going to see how fascinating this story really is. And it's like a mystery still to this day, I think.
Oh, completely. Absolutely. And there's so many books and as I said before, but people all over the world. And if you get into this, my advice would be, if anyone gets into it at all, is go into it with not just with an open mind, but with a
blank slate.
Yeah, exactly. Because, and don't believe all you read, because there are so many, conspiracy theorists out there, and there's a lot of books that actually just don't make any sense. But they're interesting read. There's a brilliant book by, I want to mention this before I forget. There was a rock group called The Damned. I think they might have been an English group. Yes, they were.
Heard of them.
Yeah, The Damned, wonderful name. Anyway, the drummer of The Damned was a guy called, I don't think he was born Rat Scabies, but he was.
Oh dear Lord.
He called himself Rat Scabies. But anyway, he's a character, and he got involved in this whole Rennes-le-Château thing, and he wrote a fantastically entertaining book. It doesn't reveal anything. It's just a wonderful narrative of his experience with Rennes-le-Château. So that's, also, interesting if somebody wanted to find that. So that's the story. So far, all we've done really is say there's this village. There's a priest who came to the village who seems to have fallen into, fell into huge amount of riches. And now we're kind of going to bring it up to, I did a lot of research on his life, and January the 17th is a significant date in all of this, and like all other things, similar to what the subject of my previous book was, Cromwell. Cromwell had certain things happen on the 3rd of September in his life, and he died on the 3rd of September.
Wow.
January the 17th is significant in Sonier's life, and he dies on January the 17th. He also it's amazing. I stood exactly in the place where he died. He died beside his Tour Magdala, where he built, and it was quite poignant. Now I have to say, it was interesting to stand there, probably about 100 years after he died, and just to take it all in, just to see it all in the exact place. But to how this kind of went global was, again, you talk about a village. There's a castle in the village, which will also come into the story, and that castle was the Blancheforts, where the people who owned that castle, and back in the 1800s, Marie Negri de Blanchefort, she was the Countess of de Hautpoul. She died, and she is supposed to have given a secret to her parish priest in the village, who, and we come to Sonier, what Sonier found in a couple of minutes. So that's another possibility of how the secret came to Sonier, if it was the secret. I know it's getting a bit complicated now, but anyway, this is the village has a castle, and there were people living in it who were quite significant in the area. So by the 1940s, Sonier was well dead, but his maid, Marie de Derniard, was still alive. And she used to say to villagers in the area that there was treasure underneath their feet. Just something that she said. She said very little else, but she was
Yeah, but
again.
she inherited all of Sonier's whatever he had, right, when he passed.
Well, she did the physical assets, if you like. She definitely did, but the
Okay.
money. One of the significant things is that Sonier actually died reasonably poor.
Oh,
So
okay. Because the one now again, I want to point this out. Just what you said.
yeah,
Don't believe everything you read, because I was
yeah,
doing research and they said that she had inherited from Sonia. They didn't say he was poor when he died, and
mm.
that she inherited the secret, some kind of scroll, and then that she inherited the riches, but. I won't go further because we're not that far in the story yet. But now they said that they implied that she got the money from Sonia. It sounds like she didn't if he died poor.
I did. I remember that as well. Now that you say it, and I remember there were. You see, the thing is, she never. If she had money, she didn't show it. So she lived in reasonable poverty as
Yeah,
well.
that's what
After,
they said in this. I forget what article I was reading that she lived. They didn't say the high life, but like a life of luxury is what they said. I'll
Mm,
have to see if I can find the article and I'll send it to you. But then again, there's something very important in there. We can't believe everything we read, especially when we're going back through history, because there's no way to prove it. You got to kind of go with consensus and what feels right and do a lot of research, right?
totally agree. Totally
And
agree.
to
Whatever
connect
feels
the
right.
dots.
Yeah, yeah. There are some things. There are some facts that are absolutely irrefutable. Not so
Hmm.
many in this story, but in lots of other research areas. But yeah, sometimes things don't fit, and sometimes there are contradictions. And if you get, a fact, and you've got maybe two or three corroborating witness statements,
Hmm.
then you could probably, why would you want to disagree or not disbelieve it at that
Right.
stage? But yeah, no, again, like that, so many, different possibilities here. So she, a restaurateur, shall we say, arrived in the village one day, and he saw this big belvedere. So if again, if you Google this, you'll see this wonderful big place that overlooks mountains, and he thought this is the perfect place for a restaurant. So
Okay.
again, to go reasonably fastly through this period, he befriended Marie, and she gave him permission to open up a restaurant there. Now, the fact is, it was up a mountain, and it was quite isolated, so business was tough.
I
So
bet.
yeah, can you imagine the
Geez, I wonder
villagers?
why not too many customers.
Exactly. Well, no, tourism was taken off. This was in the 40s, but it
Right.
was primitive enough early days, and the road up had disintegrated over the years as well, since Saunier had improved it. So the whole notion here is with this guy, his name is Noel Corbu, is that he in not so much going to say invented, but he dug back. He used to talk to Marie on a regular basis. Remember, she was his Sonia's house maid. Of course, there were suggestions too they had an affair, but that's just one of the
Yeah, I
things.
was wondering because I thought either he was part of the LGBTQ community but hidden, or I don't know, I just felt that energetically. Can I prove it? No. Or the
Yeah,
other thing I
yeah.
kept thinking, housekeeper. Okay.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, they were very close.
Hmm.
Let's just put it that way.
Did a lot of cleaning most housekeepers don't do.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, let's not go there.
No, we
That's a
won't.
different
That's all I'll
show.
say. Yeah, that's a different show. That's all I'll say.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, so anyway, she and Noel Corbu had a very strong relationship. Not again, we won't go there because we don't know exactly what it was about.
Hmm.
But and she always told him, apparently, that she would tell him what Sonier's deal was before she died. She was getting old. But he managed to get a book written, and I think what he probably did was he tried to generate visitors or tourists to the village by, let's say, promulgating this particular story about a treasure, about a priest and a treasure, and
Ah,
mysteries, and so on. Now, that book didn't really take off that significantly, but it may have done him some good, and I think it probably kept his restaurant going. But this is where this guy Pierre Plantard comes in, because he got wind of this book, and whether or not he is or was Jesus's descendant, he was intrigued with this whole story. And he's a very key player in all of this, because he understood that now we have a priest with money and mysteries and so on. And
but what about the document? Because that figured in
coming up.
Oh, still coming up.
Yeah.
Okay, sorry, getting ahead of myself. Because it came so early in this story. But okay,
I know. No, it's fine. So anyway, he decided to engage. He actually wrote a book that he couldn't get published, and so it was a follow up, or at least an embellishment, or more information about the Saunière story. But he got a guy called Gerard de Sade, Sede, and he was a published author, to use his connections to get the book published. And so the book was published. It was called The Accursed Treasure of Rennes-le-Château. And this was published in 1967.
Right.
So this got, in France, it did very well. And in it, Lorilei, they produced
the document.
there are two documents in there. So these are two parchments, and essentially this book tells the story that Saunière, when he was renovating the church in the first instance, he came across a glass file, and in that file there were two parchments, and those two parchments were engraved with various writings in Latin. Yes. And they were kind of gobbledygook to most people, and nobody could really make out what they were because they didn't really read properly. And de Sade and Plantard had put these documents in this book. They sent the book out to be published, and it went out, and that was fine. So now our hero, who I think is quite a significant individual, a guy called Henry Lincoln. He was an English broadcaster. He was a filmmaker, and he's
brilliant. From the stuff I've been watching, holy cow, he's brilliant.
Holy cow is right, Jay. I have a lot of time for that. I met him, by the way.
Did you?
I did, yeah, in Rennes-le-Château, and we'll come to that too.
Wow.
I know.
This guy's fascinating. We'll share where you can find some of the videos that Tom was kind enough to send me, because I'm telling you, he connects a lot of pieces. I'll leave it at that. Tom, go ahead and carry on. I know it was a big story to get to where we are, but there's a reason why we needed all these bits and pieces, didn't we? So it'll make more sense.
I think so. So far, we've really got a priest with money, and now we've got a book that's kind of telling the story about the priest with money. So we've essentially got we've used a lot of words to get to where we are, but we don't have an awful lot more. We've got the history and so on. So the book is it's out there, and Henry Lincoln looks at these documents, and he's got a very inquisitive mind, and he sees things in the documents that he just decides to investigate. And one of the things he sees is that some of the letters were raised.
I know, like, how can nobody see that except him? Like, when you hear this story, you guys, when you're listening to this, you're going to go, really? Like, how did nobody see this? How did nobody put this all together? Because it is fascinating. And what I will add, Tom, is that in my line of work that I do, we always say there are no coincidences.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I don't think there are these stories. So go ahead. Sorry.
I think that's the yardstick that the FBI go by as well. There are no coincidences, you know.
There are no coincidences.
Pod is falling out. So anyway, Lincoln cracked the code. Essentially, he decided to use the raised letters and insert diagonal lines, because that's what it implied, that there were going to be diagonal lines linking up all the letters. And
I'm still here. Hang on. I want to grab something while you're talking, because I took a screenshot of this. I'm still here. Go ahead.
No problem. Yeah.
It was significant. I hope I took it on this page here. Did I? It was significant to me, what the raised letters. Can you still hear me?
I can hear you, but I can't see it.
It's okay. No, I'm trying to find it. I'll post
gotcha.
Okay, here it is. I want to read this, Tom, because this was significant, okay? It was in French, But the race, this is this isn't the one. It was the word Sion,
That's right.
Sion, that when rearranged, I'm going to come back. Sorry. I got to close this because I thought that was significant because we're dealing with the priori of Sion. We're dealing with, and those raised letters he figured out. Never mind, we're getting to the lines and stuff. But that was so significant. I thought it really went ding, ding, ding for me.
Yeah.
I don't know why. Maybe we'll find out as we go through the story more.
Well, it appeared in a couple of places in the parchments. It wasn't just, it was hidden. It was in full view as well. If you looked at letters different ways, there was, at the end of a sentence was S, and the end of another sentence was I, and another one was N. So when you look straight at it, it's Sion, and it was also hidden in the texts as well. So, but he was an exceptionally clever guy, and he looked at this, and so the messages actually read. So there were messages. The messages said, and I just got written down. I'm just going to look down.
That was my screenshot, but I was looking for the letters what it was. But go ahead, because I think it's significant. It doesn't make a lot of sense, but when you break it down, it does.
Well, there's a couple of letters. I'm just looking. There's a couple of sentences. So one of them, the first parchment reads, the message is, "This treasure belongs to Dagobert II and to Sion, and he is their dead."
King.
So that's the first one. Okay. Now just bear with me while I just try and find the other one. So yes. So just when you mention treasure, because the word treasure is in there, and just to corroborate, we talked about facts being corroborated by different sources, if you like. Saunier kept a diary, and in the diary around this time, in one day he just puts the word treasure. No, nothing else, just one word, treasure. And did he find a treasure? Was he thinking about finding a treasure?
What was the treasure?
Well, who knows? Who knows what he meant? Another day, he writes the word tomb, and this is another thing because he goes into the graveyard. We'll come to that in a second. I'm getting ahead of myself here. So the other message is also significant and interesting, and it is, as you say, it's all over the place on first sight.
Yes.
So it's shepherdess, no temptation, that Poussin, tenure, hold the key, peace 681 by the cross, and this horse of God, I complete this demon guardian at midday, blue apples.
I know when I saw that, and remember, we're still it's Henry Lincoln. I always mix up his name, but it's Henry Lincoln. This gentleman is going through these messages and figuring all this stuff out. Like, this guy was more than clever. He was, I don't know if he was channeling information from somewhere. I think Deli's here. There he is. Hey, Del, you made it. I told Tom you might.
Hey, how's it going?
Good, thank you. How are you?
Good. Yeah, just got back from work there. Long day.
We're just at the really good part. Tom's going through the whole story, but we're getting to the modern day guy, Henry Lincoln, who put out documentaries and what have you. And did he find these documents of Saunier's?
No. So what he did was in the book, The Accursed Treasure of Rennes-le-Château, the documents are reproduced. So
that's where he got them. And he figures out this code, Del, and all this stuff, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So there are messages in there, and they don't like to anybody normal who wouldn't be as curious or as inquisitive as he is, they don't mean anything. But he worked out there are hidden messages, and this is the intriguing thing. He eventually, because he's a filmmaker, he got in touch with the author. And he sat down with the author, and the author was a little non-committal, and he was a little nervous about Lincoln, and he's kind of not really telling. But anyway, he eventually he says, so Lincoln more or less asks him. He says, "Well, why, why did you put those messages in there, and how many people have found them?" And so the guy says, "Well, nobody. You're the first one, and we hoped that somebody like you would come along." Now, Lincoln's kind of thinking, well, why would you hope, and why would you put messages in there, and what's this all about? So he's totally caught up with these messages. And of course, he's a very clever guy. So he works out that at one point in Saunier's life, so I'm just going to go to the second message there that I mentioned.
Okay.
Shepherdess, no temptation, that Poussin and Teniers hold the key. So they're both artists. They're both 17th century artists. So,
wait, can you read the whole message for Del again too? Because this was reproduced from the guy that the Da Vinci Code was kind of based on, Saunier, priest, way back in the day. Okay,
and they did something like this with the movie, or this is way far off of the movie?
This is way off the movie kind of thing. But wait till you hear this message and how this guy figures this out, like in his modern day. Tom met him.
Yeah, essentially.
And these were Templars and or Freemasons, or
so you're getting ahead of yourselves again.
Okay, sorry.
We're just trying to bring you up to speed. Like we told people, it's going to be a little confusing in the beginning. I saved the documentary for you once you watch it, and I'm going to post the link to Tom with this for people so that they'll be able to go back to and see, in case they kind of pop on like Del does and go, what the heck are these people talking about?
I tried to race home as fast as I could from work here to jump into this there, because I'm so excited.
Okay, but would you mind repeating that, Tom, that message? You're going to see
how
strange
no problem.
This message is.
And just before I repeat the message, and I will do in 2 seconds, like all we've done so far, Del, is just tell the history of the area. A priest came to a village. He made a lot of money, or he got a lot of money from somewhere, and now there's a book written about it. And this book it's called The Accursed Treasure of Rennes-le-Château. And so Henry Lincoln is an English documentary maker, and he picks it up. And in these parchments that are in the book, he sees messages. And this message.
Are these people anywhere connected to the Rosicrucians?
We haven't got there yet.
Is that another?
We haven't got there yet. We just started. That's why I told Tom this is going to have to be a series. I told people watching, just hang in there, because history can get, if you're not sure what people are talking about, a little bit dull. But if you just hang on and make a few notes, or you may have to come back to this, it's all going to connect in you, because I think we could really dissect a lot of this.
Yeah, it's a possibility. Yeah, absolutely.
So he's going through the message that this Henry Lincoln, the first thing was he picked up these raised letters that spelt Sion. Like we mentioned the Priory of Sion a little bit, Tom did. So now he's going through it's the second message he picked up, right, Tom?
Yeah, absolutely. And it seems like it's crazy words. Anyway, it reads like this. So, shepherdess, no temptation, that Poussin and Teniers hold the key. Peace 681 by the cross, and this horse of God, I complete this demon guardian at midday, blue apples. So, Del, what the heck does that mean?
Well, that seems like code.
Yeah, absolutely code.
Right.
Yeah, and so the way Lincoln was hooked, and he just couldn't understand why these messages hadn't been understood by lots of people.
They were in French too, weren't they, Tom? And they were translated?
I thought they were Latin, but you could be right. Yeah,
because the first ones I thought were Latin. These ones, because I just watched the video again, but I could be wrong because I was listening while I was getting ready. Either way, they weren't in English, so he picked this up, right?
Absolutely, he picked it up. Yeah. To be honest,
that could be interesting there, Tom. It's just like if they're written in whatever language they're written in, there's people. They would do codes with certain letters, and if they're written in Latin or written in something like that, there could have been sort of another part of a code that was written there. And then if we're listening to it in English, it won't make any more sense.
Oh,
right?
This guy made sense. Wait till you see how he connects the dots.
Okay.
Yeah, I think there's actually Greek in there now that I remember.
Yes, there was some Greek in there as well.
Right,
when I did I watched that video. The other thing I wanted to point out very quickly, I noticed right away with that message too, was demon was mentioned in there, but not
demon
spelled like
mentioned.
Everyday demon. It was DAEMON.
That's correct. Yeah. That's right. Really weird. The blue apples at the end is completely throws you. But then what you realize is, well, eventually anyway, you realize that blue apples is slang in French for grapes.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. But there's more story. There's more to do with the blue apples that comes up later. There's actually, would you believe, a restaurant in Rennes le Chateau called Blue Apples. They're really capitalizing on this, you know.
I was going to say, you could, well, their whole industry now is, they said the amount of 100,000 people a year visit this little tiny village because of it.
I'm even surprised that it's that few, to be honest. I don't understand how it's not that especially after.
Well, I don't think this documentary was really new. The one that you shared, I was hooked from the second I watched it. So there probably is way more.
Yeah, is this a documentary you can check out there? Is it?
I'm going to send it to you.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Sorry, I'm so. I just got back from work there. I'm sorry, I missed all this stuff.
That's okay.
You didn't miss a lot. Like I said, once you watch it, we were just sort of laying down the history of what the book was based on. We believe the fictitious book of the DaVinci Code and what it came from was the book. It was the Blood and the Grail. Is that what
the Holy Blood and the Holy Grail?
Holy Blood and the Holy Grail.
That was by three different authors: Michael Badge and Richard Lee and Henry Lincoln. Henry Lincoln is key to all this, and that was a huge bestseller worldwide in 1982, and it's what the Da Vinci Code was actually based on.
So Tom just started at the beginning of the real Saunier, and the name was actually used in the book by Dan Brown, Jacques Saunier. Yeah. So. Yeah. He just started on the real Saunier, the priest, and he started just going through the history. So we're just at what Henry is going back now through these documents to break down. And when you start hearing some of this stuff, it's mind blowing.
He's seeing stuff. Just on the movie, by the way, as well. Dan Brown, I don't know why he didn't actually mention Rennes le Chateau, and he doesn't.
No,
but there's one point where there's a bottle of wine being poured out in the Vatican, and you can see the label Rennes le Chateau on the bottle of wine. So it's a little nod to the village, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, Jacques Saunier, who dies when he's splayed across the floor of the museum.
Vitruvian Man.
That's correct. Mm-hmm. Yes, he's based on Berenger Saunier. So the big thing about this is the paintings. The first painting would be so Poussin is mentioned. And, when Lincoln went to check all this out, and I'm probably going to go through this reasonably quickly because there's so many details in this. Poussin, was he ever in Rennes, or was he ever around there? There's no real evidence that he was, but yet there's a suggestion that he made his way towards Spain, and he stopped off in Rennes because he painted a picture that's called The Shepherds of Arcadia.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where Henry Lincoln went next, sort of thing, if you know what I mean, in terms of the chronology. And looking at this particular painting, and you think, okay, why is this painting even significant? There's a scene in it. There's a tomb where there are shepherds at the tomb, and they're pointing at words on a tomb. And in the background, it looks like it has the local landscape around Rennes is captured, but the artist takes a bit of artistic license. But you can see Rennes, you can see different mountains. Sorry, wasn't
there a female shepherd in there too? If I was hearing it correctly, the shepherdess was also included with this picture too, right?
That's correct. Yes, absolutely. Well done. Absolutely, Lorilei. That they weren't so misogynistic back in those days.
Oh, I didn't mean that. I meant it went with the code. Like it started out, the shepherdess, right?
Yes, that's right. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And one of them is holding a staff. So for some reason, and I don't know why, maybe it's because it's his logical brain, Lincoln decided to look at this painting. And of course, when he looked at the painting, he realized in the same way that when he looked at the parchments, that there are angles, there are measurements that are absolutely, there's a geometric system going on, and it's kind of
crazy.
It's very similar to what's going on in the parchments. And then, suddenly there's this, and it can't be a coincidence because everything is so precise and detailed, So there's a Masonic, practically geometric system in the painting, and it's based on a pentacle or a pentagram.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
So whatever way you want to put it. So Lincoln is now. So he's got the painting. He's got the messages in the. He's got the book as well, and he's kind of intrigued because he's trying to think. Okay, well, let's just see if there is a treasure. Now, one of the other aspects of this, I did mention, Del, by the way, that I've been to Rennes le Chateau maybe 6 or 7 times, and when you go here into the village, there's a sign up, and it's a very strange sign to have outside the village. It says, "No digging. You can't dig in Rennes-le-Château."
Oh, really?
Well, you can see why there'd be no Rennes-le-Château left.
Exactly.
Everybody looking for the treasure.
Exactly.
Oh yeah, yeah.
But now
Over the
nobody knows
years.
what this treasure is either, Del. Like, they don't know. Like, does it exist? Is it a person? Is it a bloodline? Like, what is it?
Well,
Yeah.
this comes into the part there is when I listen to the DaVinci Code and the stuff that the Tom Hanks movies did there. I know it was sort of really off base from a lot of stuff that was there, but it was really interesting about the part is about these paintings and people that were in these fraternities, or what do you want to call, groups and stuff like that, that they would do stuff and they'd have them very carefully mathematically laid out, and there'd be little parts in there that would be this part, this part, this part, this part. And
I think that was a nod to this stuff, wasn't it, Tom? If you think about it, like what William found.
Yeah, there's Henry. There's a
Henry. Sorry, Henry.
Yeah, no, there's like artists used to do that. They used to hide messages in their paintings, and even some of them, the great ones, would have messages in behind the original painting, where if you X-ray it, you see stuff.
But they X-rayed that painting. They said
they did.
I'm getting ahead of myself. I know I am.
No, that's absolutely no problem.
I'm so excited now because it's all coming together, and people are going to be tuning in now, going, "What the heck are they talking about?"
Yeah. Well, wasn't the part about the Mona Lisa that there was a painting behind that painting?
Okay, I didn't know that.
Yeah,
okay, yeah.
And then also the part with Leonardo da Vinci, that I was actually a picture of himself as a female, but
yes, I've heard that too.
Yes.
Yeah.
But there's all these layers with these fraternity groups or these secret societies, and it's all part of the I guess the mystery and conspiracy and stuff like that.
Yeah.
That they would hide things in pictures that would be placed somewhere.
That's right.
So that anybody that came by, it was like even doing like the secret handshake and stuff like that.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that
we haven't got to all that stuff yet. All we mentioned was a priori scion, and I put my conspiracy theory: is it really gone, or does it still exist, or did it amalgamate with something? And Tom goes, "You're going to have to point that." I go, "There's a lot of Freemasonry in there."
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, this is good because Tom, we're going to do like this here, and then do it on mine.
He'll be all caught up, Tom. He'll
like,
watch the documentary. And
once you see exactly, once you see the beginning of this as well. So Lincoln, again, he's kind of a hero in all this in my book, because he's a truth seeker, as you say.
Yes.
He wants to get to the bottom of it. So what he does is, as a filmmaker, because this is a ripe subject for a documentary, he makes a documentary. He sends it out there, I think, in 1970, and it goes out, and it's all of this stuff, and it's about the painting and the geometry. And of course, it's not just one documentary, just like this show as well. He eventually has 3 documentaries that he makes out of this whole topic. Now, they went into the world and they created what Lincoln actually did was he put Rennes-le-Château on the map, because up to that, the book hadn't done it. It was reasonably well known in France, but it hadn't been known outside France, essentially. So Lincoln, with these documentaries, put it there. But he wasn't happy with what he had seen, and he had seen anomalies, and he'd seen stuff and he was, as well as being incredibly inquisitive and clever, he was also very cynical, and he wouldn't believe stuff unless it really was absolutely categorical and it made sense. And so when the painting, you see, what we're trying to do is find the location of the treasure.
Yeah,
that's what it's all about. Like, are there clues in the painting? Are there clues in the church? And we'll come to the church shortly. And what do all these things mean? So Lincoln's one of the first things that he did was he just decided to look at the landscape as well as the painting, because the painting seems to be based on, as I said, a pentacle or a pentagram, and he just decided to see what the landscape looked like when you took the castle at Rennes, the church at Rennes, and there are a couple of other mountains around in the vicinity, and there were a couple of other castles, and one, there would be Templar Dell, as it happens. There's a place just across the way, you can see it's called Bezou, and then there's Blanchford in one. And so when he joined them all up, anyway, he realized that there was a triangle in these three, and then he began to. Now I'm not a mathematician, so I don't fully understand, but the point I'm making is that some of these sites in this area were so to the millimeter. Not to, I know you guys deal in imperial over there, but to the inch.
Yeah.
The half inch.
Actually, in Canada, we are in millimeters and metric and what have you.
Okay, yeah. Excellent. Well, so again, too much of a coincidence to be a coincidence. So he found pentagrams in the landscape. And this took him back. Now, this is a kind of a different direction to the treasure, because he was still looking for the treasure. He was still looking for the location of the treasure or whatever. But he realized that what he had found, and he wrote a book about this, and it's called The Holy Place. And that also became a documentary as well. That what that implied was that this was a very significant place that was forgotten about. That it essentially emulated what the stars looked like, so the galaxy. So the ancient civilizations had basically copied what the universe, what like in the universe, what the stars were telling them. So and
that's super interesting, because the Egyptians did the same thing with the pyramids.
And he referenced that, didn't he? In part of that
I think he did.
video, he referenced that it was very similar.
And I think there's the part there with a lot of places, and sorry for cutting you off there, is with this is what I've heard about, and I've read about with the Freemasons. There is that everything is very mathematical. Like, this building is here, and it's here to here, and it's very done. Washington, D.C. is laid out, and it was done by Freemasons. So is the Vatican there too, and it's based off of Egyptian layout too as well, with the phallic symbol of the.
Didn't we just talk about the obelisk, that mountain we were talking about before you came on?
That's true. Yeah. Absolutely. No, you're right. Yeah, a lot of these civilizations. And there's also, I think, there's a Norwegian island called, I think it's Bornholm, where Lincoln also went to, and there's a very similar pattern there with the way the churches are built. At first it doesn't look like they are, but then when you take angles and you measure lines and so on,
and they didn't have drones. Like, not that drones would do all the work, but you get a better idea and a better picture.
I think now, when Lincoln was around, mind you, he only died this year, believe it or not. He died in January this year, but he probably would have looked at Google Earth.
That's a good idea. Yeah,
because
sorry, that's actually really funny. There is, because now is the last 2 years is that people are studying Google Earth. There's so much, and then with the LiDAR, they're finding places that are below, but they're seeing points and stuff like that, and layouts that nobody could see before unless you were in a plane. Right?
Exactly.
But, yeah,
and that's like, even when it depends on when the images were taken, but if it's dry, and it has been dry for some time, stuff comes through the landscape, that you don't normally see. But anyway, he didn't have Google Earth, but he worked out an incredible. So that's a kind of a different. I know we're going on to a different area, but that's what Lincoln. So he put Rennes-le-Château on the map. He sent so many people to the village vicariously by just putting the information out there, and people wanted to get to the bottom of the Saunier story. And he, essentially created, like, I was there on a few occasions, and I'm sitting there. I remember sitting there sipping my orange juice, and as I looked down from the balcony that I was sitting on, there is a lady who bought a house just kind of up the way, and she had bought a field just below her, and that field had, if you like, it was a landing pad for UFOs. because she figured, yeah, she figures that at some stage something's going to land here. And we did talk about UFOs earlier.
We did, yes.
Yeah, and she is, and she may still live there. I don't know, but when I was there last time, I was there maybe 10 years ago. So we all know that this is the field where the UFO is going to land at some point in time.
Because she's prepared it.
Yes, exactly. Now, Lincoln is so he's now obsessed with this. Believe it or not, what Lincoln actually does is he moves to France. He speaks very good French, and he only died. So he died in a village that's quite close to Rennes-le-Château. And interestingly, just as a little aside, we were there on one occasion, and I was always interested in the mystery, but I wasn't one of those crazy guys who would bring a metal detector and a spade or a shovel.
Ask who has a metal detector in this house that they got for their birthday. That's not me.
Metal detectors are good. I've used them.
It's pretty cool, actually.
Absolutely, yeah. But you just don't wander into a village that you're not supposed to dig in.
Well, I was just gonna say, what are you gonna do if you find something you can't dig?
They're very sensitive to any sort of digging at all in Rennes.
I guess.
Yeah. But anyway, so he became such a big icon in this whole story. He moved there. He lived the rest of his life there. And there are lots of people who will move to Rennes-le-Château or the area because of this. Now, I would go because of the landscape and the amazing place that Rennes is, and the beautiful weather, because the south of France is really lovely. But we're going to just go back now, just to, if you don't mind, to the church.
Because wherever you want to go.
Perfect, because some of the things that happen in the church are very unusual. So
we're laying the stage for this, because like I said, if you're just tuning in, I should remind people you're listening live to the Angel Rock with our returning guest and good friend of ours. The Della's here with us. He's just joined us after work, and I appreciate that, because I know he works hard and comes home. He's very tired, so I'm glad he's here. And we've got our good friend, Tom Reilly. So what we're doing is we're setting the stage for a series we're going to be doing. We're trying to do them together, but the Dell and I have a show on a different night, so we may kind of pick up on different nights where we can fit this in, but we're setting the stage for this, the history for as we know it and what we've seen through the research so far. So it may seem a little convoluted, a little bit difficult to follow, but stick with us. I'm also going to post the links to the videos we've been referencing that Tom was so kind to share with me before the show. So you too will see where we're coming from with this, but I promise you it's all going to connect. Sorry about that. I wanted to add that in there, Tom.
Not at all.
And a big thing I think that I've read about and I've watched about is the architecture is like you said there before, hidden things in the architecture, and then also in the paintings too of places. So there's sort of like a double scale thing there, and then with these sort of secret hidden. You don't call them cults. Well, you don't call them cults. They're groups or secret communities that were sort of around there, and if you're a part of it, you would look at something. It's like looking at a stop sign. You would see it and you would understand it, but nobody else would.
No, that's right.
No, like we talked about the Cathars, or Cathars, like you said, right? Cathars. And then we talked about the Priori Sion. We talked about a few things, but we didn't really talk about the churches. So I'm glad you're going back to the church, because I want to hear more about this church and the churches involved.
Yeah, I think the church is, it's a hugely significant aspect of this story, because again, like I've been there and I understand the church and I've touched it, I've walked into it, I've so many times, I've stood in it alone, I've looked around the church, I've felt, so many different feelings in that church. You know yourself, when you go into a church, you walk straight through the door and the whole world outside is gone.
Disappears.
This atmosphere, whatever is created in these old buildings, is just
and just gonna go. It says just the comment on that part there is that the way they were built and set up, they were set up that you wouldn't need a microphone or anything like that. They were set up so that your acoustics went through. Yeah, and it's sort of, we don't do this anymore when we build things, but they were just set up that way, and it was
so clever. So clever. Yeah, and these, this isn't a big. It's actually like one of the aspects of it was the church that belonged to the castle, so it wasn't the village church. But by the time Saunier arrived in the village, it happened to be the village church because the other church had burnt down, and so it was the village church at that time. So anyway, Saunier inherited a very dilapidated building.
Yes.
It needed restoration of some sort. But what he did was he decorated it in his own style, shall we say. Some of the anomalies are quite remarkable. When you step inside the door, there's a statue of the devil immediately on your left-hand side.
And then we got demon in that, not spelled the same way. That would be the old way. Never mind. I understand that it is fictitious, but Dan Brown's second book is Angels and Demons, isn't it?
That's correct. It is indeed Angels and Demons. Yes, that's right. Yeah.
There's got to be something to this.
Yeah,
you just didn't put it there for no reason.
Absolutely. And these things, back in the day, we were saying earlier on, Del, that this guy was only on a salary of 900 francs a year, but he spent something like $5 million on the village.
And he was hanging out with people back in the day, like Oprah Winfrey and things like that. Like he redid the road up to this little tiny village he was in. And there's a lot of questions about all this stuff, isn't there?
And I was just saying, if you won the lotto, one of the first things you wouldn't think of is to go out and improve the roads. But this is what
you don't want people coming there. Can you give me some money? I'm in dire straits, right?
Yeah, I need to fix some potholes. But he got stuff custom made. This is the whole point. He didn't buy stuff off the shelf. And the thing about this is there are documents and receipts, and because he dealt with a lot of suppliers in Toulouse in France, who still had records of purchases that he made. So again, he's spending extravagantly. So you have a statue of the devil. Now, before you step into the church, and it's so quaint, you're walking down this lovely French alleyway and you appear in front of the church. And again, there's a famous photograph of him standing there in his vestments just at the front door, and you take all this in. And up at the top, just before you enter the Gothic arch, there's a statement, and it says, it's in Latin, and it says, "This is a terrible place."
Oh, wow.
Ooh. You would think we're walking into the Church of Satan almost. You would think, really, some of these things, what you're explaining.
That's almost like that the Vatican church there. When you look from the back part there, it looks like a snake.
Snake head,
But what do there are what do these things mean? Like, what does terrible place mean? Like, what if you certainly wouldn't put that in front of a church in Ireland because people wouldn't go in. But he did. He put it there, and nobody really knows why. The word
to discourage true people, everybody but true believers. I don't know.
Well, maybe a part out of it is because the Catholic Church, the Vatican, very vilified Ireland, right? And they basically called them that they were leprechauns, small.
Yeah, but we aren't in Ireland. Like we're in France.
So
we're in France, though. No.
Oh, in France. Well,
yeah. But I get what you're saying, but there has been an analysis of that sentence done, and the suggestion is that maybe the word terrible isn't what it means today. So it could be like kind of awesome. Terrible, if you know what I mean. It's like,
or an anagram, maybe an anagram.
Not so much an anagram as a different meaning, Lorilei. Do you know what I mean?
No, I hear what you're saying, a different meaning, but I'm wondering too, could there possibly, with an anagram, rearranging all the letters, like was it in Latin that it was written, or?
No, it's in Latin, but it could easily mean, if you substitute the word awesome, maybe you think, okay, that's a different
No, and
meaning.
I hear what you're saying. I'm throwing out another theory, because I hear what you're saying. Yeah.
Maybe it's like terribly good place to come.
And I think that's what Tom is saying. But I said maybe too, with it being in Latin, maybe to like the code that we see that Lincoln discovered in the first place. And like, I'm just throwing ideas out.
No, absolutely. Yeah. No, there's no question. And look, trust me, everybody who has looked at this in terms of people who are interested in it have analyzed every single sentence, every single step Saunier made. And we haven't really gotten into so many things that he did, because he did so many peculiar things during his time in
Has
Rennes.
anybody remote viewed? This is driving me crazy, because I know with remote viewing you can go back in time. I wonder if you went back in time just to see what you get.
I'm curious to know what you mean there.
Remote viewing?
Yeah.
Okay, so have you ever heard of the movie The Men That Stare at Goats with George Clooney?
Yes.
Okay, that is based on the United States remote viewing program. And it's supposed to now be defunct, okay? But with remote viewing, some people can do it naturally. Some people can be trained to do it. But it, because if you look at that, time is really happening all at the same time, right? It's a man-made concept. So past, present, future are the same. So with remote viewing, if you know what you're doing, you can go back in time. You can go forward in time, because I swear to God, and they've been proven scientifically, some people that are really incredible at this, 85 to 90% accuracy rate with remote viewing. It is mind-blowing. I have taken a course with it, for example. All I've been given is 12 numbers. And there's a process that you have to do. You go into, the way I was trained, go into a hypnotic state to get the mind in a theta level. And then you just go, you might feel like you're making it up, whatever it is, but there's some sketching. It doesn't have to be beautiful sketching. It's just using another one of the senses, right? And those numbers relate to famous places around the world, with the person that trained me how to do this. And and then what they do is they gather the facts from, because the person that taught me, Dr. Chuck Kennedy, he has teams, and he uses this like to solve cold cases, missing persons, like really good for good things. Okay, but my whole point is,
somebody needs to apply that method to this, because you never
know. That's what I'm thinking, because what he does is he doesn't let anybody talk to. We don't talk to each other. For example, I'm not part of the team. I just sort of took the training. I'd love to do it one day, but he takes a whole bunch from people all over the world, takes what they get, puts it together, and then with percentages, like, did he get like maybe, out of 10 people, 8 people got the same thing. Well, how did you all get the same thing? And pulls it in. But it could be done with something like this. I wonder if anybody's done it.
Well, do you know what? That's an angle that maybe nobody has done, Lorilei. I don't know, but it certainly I haven't read about it. So
it couldn't hurt, whether you believe in it or not, just to see what you got, or if you had a whole group of people remote viewing it separately to see what you got.
Exactly. See what the percentage is, and if anything is worth taking from it. I think we should probably try that.
Hey, we can do that. Remote view, and we can find the Holy Grail.
Exactly.
I have some people, like this lady has said, with treasure and stuff. There's one guy, for example, very, very quickly, I'm not getting off topic. There's one guy, Ingo Swann was one of their best remote viewers in the world. He's no longer alive. But Lynn Buchanan, he's getting quite elderly. He trains people, and Laurie Johnson trained under him. He was part of the remote viewing team with the military, and that one of the characters, the movie The Men That Stare at Goats, was based on. But anyways, the person he works with, Laurie, she talked about people use this like to find lost treasures, to find all kinds of things. And there was one guy in particular, for the longest time when he was alive, companies hired him because he could project into the future to see if their idea would be successful or not. He got quite wealthy from it because he was very accurate.
Wow. That's kind of hair.
Sounds crazy.
Yeah, it does. Yeah,
lots of crazy out there, but hey, it's worth a try, especially if we find the treasure.
Well, you know what? I'm in.
Well, this is the thing, though. Out of this whole part there, I know, like, these are all possibilities and stuff like that, and I know what I can't discount it if it does work or doesn't work or whatever. But I don't know. It's just if you think if this was something that was so important, like the Holy Grail, the Ark of the Covenant.
We've talked a little bit about
like that.
That's right. The secret, the bloodline.
Yeah. It says that some government or some agency would have already done this and already picked it up. So it's either there or not.
Yeah, right? But look what Henry Lincoln did that nobody else. So at least they didn't put it out there, did they?
I was thinking about that Indiana Jones, the end of the movie.
He already brought Indiana Jones up with all this.
And they have the Ark of the Covenant, and they just put it in that big warehouse.
Yeah, that's correct at the end. Yeah.
We don't want to run out of time here because I know Tom works so hard. Go ahead, Tom, because
I
want you to share about the churches.
Yeah, I've got so much to say anyway.
I know
we're
you
definitely not going to
do.
get it all done tonight. So, yeah. So the church then. So you got the devil's head, by the way, was sawn off at one point
Oh dear
in
God.
recent years. Yeah.
What did you
Because
say, Mason? What?
sorry, in recent years.
Oh, I thought you said it in Mason. I heard. Sorry.
I don't
No,
My
no.
headphones.
Yeah.
recent years.
I'm
Yeah.
my conspiracy theory spidey
Yeah,
senses. I'm looking for that word right now.
your
I'm not.
antenna is up. Yeah, I know.
Okay, so in recent years it was sawed off.
Yeah, so it was sawed off. Now they've replaced the devil. It's a little different. And again, there's stuff on YouTube who have actually compared the two devils, and they've kind of gone overkill on this. But some of the other aspects of the church is that the stations of the cross that go around, all those things. He's got them in the opposite way. He's got them completely anti-clockwise or clockwise, whatever it should be. It shouldn't be. So
Wow.
he put them the wrong way, and you're not going to
He
make
did all
that
this
mistake.
on purpose just to mess with people.
You see, he could have done that. Yeah, it's also painted very gaudily, but there's also there are two Jesuses on the altar. So you've got a picture, a statue of Jesus, and then you've got another statue of Jesus. And what's going on? So that kind of introduces a duality to the story. There's a lot of duality that goes on. Again, we could probably talk about that in the next program. And there are the blue apples, by the way, on January the 17th.
That date again.
There's that date, the date that he died. Near the statue of St. Anthony, when the sun shines at a particular time of the day, an image of blue apples appears on the wall. So,
like a shadow or just an image?
Just an image of blue apples. Wow. I've seen a picture of it. You can see a picture of it on YouTube somewhere if you Google those words.
So why would they call grapes blue apples? Was there anything? Because grapes they're either red or they're green, but they're
or purple.
Yeah, I think it's a slang word as far as I remember. This is
in French. Okay. In French, well, I'm thinking I just had the words for grape and I lost it now. Well, blue apples in French is
pomme bleu.
Pomme bleu. Yeah, but
okay.
Oh, it's raison bleu.
Okay, well,
because so why?
It needs further investigation. I don't know.
That's why we're doing a series with this. That's why we want people's ideas or thoughts or what they found. Like this, we're going to figure this out, I think.
Yeah, there's so exactly.
Yes.
So what is the treasure at the end that we're gonna find?
We don't know if there even is one.
We did mention earlier, Del. I know you probably look back at this, and I don't want to repeat it for your listeners or viewers to the point where it gets tedious. But there are 5 possibilities of the money and the treasure and what it could possibly be.
Okay.
And the 6th or the 5th, and one of them is anyway that it could be that he found a secret. And it's potentially linked to the bloodline of Jesus and the Merovingians and so on, and that he bribed the church. Now, the only problem with that is that the church wouldn't be behind the door, if you know what I mean, by just killing him, because that's an answer to...
That would be their easy, cheap answer.
Absolutely, yeah. But whether or not he had, formed a way to, did he pass the information on and say you can't do that because, or did he have that coverage? I don't know. It's all so intriguing. There's also a full moon in one of these images of Jesus's body being moved from the tomb, and apparently bodies where the Jews wouldn't move bodies at night. So that's another thing. Again, people have looked into this whole.
That's another thing there too. Is with Saddam Hussein there when they had said that they had tossed him out of the plane. And he wasn't buried in the correct position. There's different parts of different.
No, not Saddam Hussein. Saddam Hussein was hung. You're talking about the guy with the beard. What's his name? That the whole war started after 9/11. What's his name? Bin Laden.
Yeah. And then.
But we're getting off track here. Come on, we only got 20 minutes left for the churches, and I know Tom's worked so hard on this. We can talk. That's why I want to do a series on this because there's so much.
I want to is the Spear of Destiny, is it the Holy Grail, the Ark of the Covenant, It's all these religious.
All of the above.
All the above.
There you go.
Potentially.
He's laying the foundation here. This will help your shows too. So
the Ark of the Covenant apparently was stolen by the Visigoths from the Temple of Solomon, and that may have ended up in the south of France. All of these things are alleged, may have, may not have, who knows. So getting back to the church is, again, you can go on YouTube and there's a film that would show you all around the church and all the different elements of what Saunier actually also painted some of the altar himself, which was interesting. Now, one of the things we mentioned earlier on, Dale, was when he was renovating the church, he found these parchments, and the parchments led him to find treasure, apparently. So immediately after renovating the church, he goes into the graveyard and he's digging, and he's doing a lot of digging, and he goes
before
away.
It was banned.
Well, before it was banned, he was allowed to dig.
The last digger.
Believe it or not, they had to move his body from the graveyard because people people always tried to break into the graveyard to see where he was buried. So they moved it to a position where they could actually pay respects to him, and it's on the Belvedere that he built. So you can actually go and see Saunier's grave now. So it's there. So, one of the other things that he used to do was he used to make trips down. When you think of Rennes Chateau, it's on a mountain, as I say. He would go down to the local area, and he used to bring back stones, and he built this grotto just beside the church. And there's also a secret. All these things are coming to me now. There's a secret room in the church that isn't obvious from the inside, but it's obvious from the outside, and it's got a circular window, but you can't access it that easy. Apparently there's a panel that you take away before you access it. There's a lot of these things in as you can imagine, in churches and buildings of that ilk from the south of France.
Right.
Saunier, essentially, there were lots of other areas that I could go to here. So, did he was he looking for the tomb of Jesus? If you know what I mean.
Who was in the tomb? Because should we leave it hanging there that we're gonna? Well, let's leave it on a cliffhanger until we have a little bit of discussion time, if that's okay, Tom.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we might do that. What I was going to just do is just basically go to what I call the bonus material, because you've got essentially the mystery, which we've just kind of outlined.
Okay.
But I wanted to say in particular that there are some books. There's one particular book, and it's really worth getting, and it's called Jesus After the Crucifixion, and it's by a guy called Graham Simmons. And I read that book, Lorilei and Dale, while I was in Rennes-le-Château. And can I tell you, this is what would really, I had one of those moments that don't happen too often in life.
Epiphany?
It's kind of an epiphany, yeah. It's more of it's just a very, a personal, kind of feel good thing. I didn't feel, completely different afterwards. So it wasn't an epiphany as such in the true sense of that word. What the book does is it takes the Jesus married Mary Magdalene story, brings him to Rennes-le-Château. He lived out his days teaching Christianity in the area, by what this book means, or what it professes to tell us. But there's a suggestion in this book, it's a very clear suggestion, that Jesus is buried in Rennes-le-Château. Now, it's been dismissed universally, and that's fine, because I've got no issue with that at all. But at that time, when I was invested in this story, and I'm sitting here reading this book, I can tell you, he told me in the book where he figured Jesus was buried in the, specifically in the village. So I got up, and it was just an idle Wednesday. The sun was shining. I walked probably about 20 or 50 yards to where he said Jesus was buried. And guys, I just stood there, and I thought to myself, am I the only one who's experiencing this? Have people read this book and stood here before? Is Jesus buried in this position? And everybody thinks he's buried in, and where is it? Jerusalem?
Bethlehem. Bethlehem, Jerusalem.
He was born. Yeah.
Bethlehem, Jerusalem, Sea of Galilee, and this is okay. This is the part there that maybe we can think about this. There was that. Where is France? How far is France away from that part
Jerusalem?
of the
Holy Land. Yeah, it's quite a distance, I have to say.
Yeah, and I know that they had John the Baptist had gone up to
That's right.
had gone up to Italy area.
Yes, yeah, they went to Europe.
Yeah, but never the part there in the 33 years did Jesus Christ ever go past anything that's ever recorded.
Yeah, but you're assuming he died when he was 33, John.
Yeah.
That's an assumption that we spoke about earlier, that he actually didn't die on the cross. That he was spirited, shall we say, to Europe because Mary Magdalene came to Europe, and there's a possibility. These are all possibilities.
Plus, there's a church named after Catholic church named after Mary Magdalene in Rennes-le-Château. Like she was demonized, basically.
I'm just wondering why France.
We got into the Merovingian kings. We didn't even touch on what they were or who they were. We were just trying to lay down some of the story here.
It's sort of interesting there. It says like, why France?
Well, my suggestion is that maybe we all Google, because Google is never wrong. What they say, Mary Magdalene and France, because it's not. This is I think it's a known fact. He says in inverted commas that Mary Magdalene actually did come to France. The not so known fact is whether Jesus accompanied her with his children, with their children, Del, Sarah, and James.
Oh yeah, I've heard that story too. There, yes, there's a lot of things. Well, you got to understand is I've talked about this many times. There is that people that like the Bible has been manipulated many times.
We talked all about that at
and
the beginning.
there are hidden stories at the Vatican, the hidden libraries of stuff there that are out there, and. Yes, and
would they want us to know? Would they want us to know that Jesus actually lived after the crucifixion and he came to France and continued to practice, preaching Christianity with his children and his wife?
Like we talked about the resurrection 3 days later. Like, is that
they
how
have to wonder: was Lucifer actually a bad person, or was he actually a misunderstood person? And is Lucifer
he wasn't a
Satan
person; he
or
was an angel.
Beelzebub and all that stuff? There's so many things that the Vatican, the Roman Catholic Church, has lied to the people about. It's unbelievable,
and that's why should we necessarily believe, or at least we should certainly keep an open mind on whether or not Jesus. And again, I mentioned earlier that there are those who believe that Jesus was spirited to the skies or whatever by aliens.
We talked a little bit about that too.
That's a possibility. It says like angels could be the aliens that everybody's been talking about, and it makes this all makes sense, like in a way there, right? Anything that is, if you use the word alien as something that isn't in our reality right now, that is different from whatever a dimension or from a different place, a different plane, then it is an alien, right? So
exactly. And it also raises people's suspicions and sometimes their defenses. If you mention the word alien, I wish you had a different word. But so there are lots of suggestions about that, and I personally would love to believe that Jesus did live on. Just a couple of other things, again, conscious of the time. The Holy Place, which was the book that Henry Lincoln wrote, was superseded then in the 90s. I think in 1996, there were two guys who got together and looked at the parchments and looked at Lincoln's geometry, and their names were Richard Andrews and Paul Schellenberger. Now, these two guys are interesting because they then published The Tomb of God. So what they did was they went to the area, they took Henry Lincoln's geometry and took it a bit further to try and understand exactly, and using the parchments as their base.
Okay.
Because Lincoln didn't really get to his goal. He didn't find the treasure. He didn't really, work it all out, so to speak. But these guys thought they had worked it out. Now, there's a caveat in there because they were subsequently kind of discredited. But were they?
Oh.
So, yeah. Well, again, everything to me is open. But the Tomb of God is a very thick book, and it goes through in a lot of detail. Again, the painting, the shepherds of Arcadia. But what they conclude is that there's a mountain in the area that it's called Cardu. And if you, again, Google that, and the Tomb of God, you'll see that they conclude that Jesus is buried in a tomb in Cardu. Now, the only thing that they didn't find, which is huge, is the tomb.
But gee,
yeah,
I wonder why that fell apart.
It's kind of key. It's kind of key. Now, there's a BBC program called Time Watch, and this book sold huge. It was the #1 bestseller all over the world. And when they were kind of challenged by the journalists on Time Watch, things started to fall apart. One of the key things, Lorilei, that they honed in on were the 2 parchments, and they asked a simple question. They said to the guys, "So you've put a lot of store in these parchments and the angles that you get, like Lincoln did. Have you seen the originals?" And they kind of went, "No." So it's a good question. How did you do your geometry? Well, we did it from the copies in the book or the copies of whatever,
But how do you know they were correct?
Well, so that's the thing. So the whole thing about, we mentioned Pierre Plantard earlier. I don't know if you heard that, Del, but he's claimed to be a descendant of Jesus, so existing in
the bloodline. Yeah.
Really?
In the 1950s. Yeah, exactly.
And how did he prove that?
Well,
we haven't got enough time to get it. We only got about 3 minutes because I want you just to leave us with something that we can build on for our next show. Because even if what I'm thinking of doing, guys, and we need to talk more about it, is we may be able to pre-record some shows. And Sundays, I know on our network, there's room. Maybe we can kind of fill in the details on Sundays or what. We're working it out. But Del's also going to be doing some of this on his show. Because, like I said, we had to build the foundation, and then we're going to start digging into a lot of the questions. Like Del asked, I'm dying.
There's so many spider webs that go off of this.
Okay, well, let leave us with what he wants to leave us with right here, Tom.
Well, to be honest, I don't know. I've got so many choices, So the Tomb of God is the big one. Now, so I think this all takes us back oddly, to the Priory of Sion. And the Priory of Sion.
I would love to go there next.
That's not a place?
I know it's not. I know it's not a place, an organization.
Just thought it's an
organization.
Yeah. I'd love to go there next. I got to be careful what words.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I know it's not a place.
I know you do. So, what kind of happened, and this is where I might leave it, is that with the investigations that Lincoln did, and when he challenged Plantard and de Sade about the book, The Accursed Treasure of Brenda Chateau, there were certain documents, including all the Grand Masters of the Priory of Sion, who included Leonardo da Vinci, which is where this all comes from.
And they seemed unrelated. I was when the video I was looking at,
That's right. Yeah, what the heck is he got to do? But throughout history, I think from the 12th century up, there were certain Grand Masters who were all significant individuals. Isaac Newton was another one. There were a guy called Debussy was another one. Robert Boyle, who was an Irish guy, oddly, who was a scientist. But the thing is, they can't be asked whether they were Grand Masters or not, because the Grand Masters anyway were keeping the secret of the bloodline. There's also a documentary called Bloodline, which we'll talk about in the next program, maybe, which was amazing. And because a guy called Ben Hammett showed us on film him going into a tomb, and maybe this is where I'll leave it, going into a tomb with the film and everything, and finding a tomb with a body in it and other artifacts that he reckons was the tomb of Mary Magdalene.
Oh, there we go.
Oh,
why don't we
let's
just say,
leave it there,
is
Tom.
that true?
Let's leave it there. Thank you so much, because I know you did so much work, because we're running out of time here. So very quickly, where can they find you, Tom?
Oh, just Facebook, Lorilei.
Yeah.
It's Facebook. I'm a runner.
Or your
so you'll
book
see
too, right? You can get your
Oh,
book
the
as
book,
well.
yeah. Oh, to hell with the book.
I know this is an Oliver Cromwell, and we've done shows on this as well. So
yeah, it is a brilliant book, but of course, so I just have to
we're
throw
going
that
on
in.
to different. Thank you for being here. We're going to a different topic we're all passionate about. Deli, where can they find you?
You find me Thursdays at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, and Tom will be back on with me there on, I believe it's the
And I might be
25th.
sticking my nose in too. I'll be quiet, but I want to get caught up. I don't want to miss anything.
So do your homework, guys. Check it all out, because
do your homework. I'm going to post some links. I can do it, I think, on Facebook and also on YouTube link and stuff for people if you're interested, because Tom sent me some great documentaries. They're not too long, but they explain a lot more and kind of connect the pieces, because there's so much information to the story. There's no way we could do this in one show. That's why we want to do quite a few and dig into a lot of different areas. If you've got some questions, comments, maybe you want to know something, maybe you got something to share, feel free to reach out to me on facebook.com/The Angel Rock. I also have 2 groups on Facebook, Paranormal University for all things paranormal, Angel Rocker Tribe for everything esoteric, spiritual, power positivity in the mind, and so on. I will be back. Oh, also, if you want to book a healing session or any readings with me, you can get a hold of me, same place, facebook.com/The Angel Rock. I will be back next week, same time, same space, so 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time with The Angel Rock, with another fantastic guest. I want to thank Tom for being here so much. I can't wait to do more shows like this, because this is going to be a series, as well as Adele. Okay, sending you guys all so much love and light. Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, wherever you may be. We'll see you next week. And stay tuned for the Horsefly Chronicles coming right up next with the Syracuses. Thanks so much, everybody.